What's up, scientists? It's Sean here with a tutorial on the Theia wireless control app. Theia is compatible with iOS and Android devices and is available for download from the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store. Theia is your primary interface for interacting with your science products and is packed full of features, so let's get started. When you first open the app, you'll be greeted by the sign-in page. We use Google security services, so just make sure you're using a Gmail account or Gmail-based email account. If this is your first time opening the app, you'll have to allow some permissions. Allow access to your files. This will let you import and export recipes. This is very important. Make sure you allow device's location. This plays a role in connecting to your lights, in addition to the Bluetooth being on. Once you're signed in, you'll come to the main connections page. This is where you do all your connecting to your lights. Never pair your device directly with the lights. This can cause it to not be able to be connected through the app. So always connect in Theia. You'll notice that it is organized by groups within Bluetooth range by default. And on each group, we have options to connect to the group, rename the group. Note this does not change the channel. And you can also display the devices within that group. You can also show all lights within Bluetooth range. And in the top right corner, there's a QR code scanner. So you can scan the QR code on your light to connect directly to that specific fixture. Let's do that now with our Cush. And now we are connected to the Raging Cush. Here are your manual controls over your cool channel, the reds, the warm channel, and your overall intensity. In the bottom right is your group and single mode toggle switch. To the left of that is your recipe mode toggle switch. The top left is how you access your main menu bar. Here you have the About page. This is where you find out information like software version about your light. The configuration page, this sets settings within the light. Spectrum page that we were just on. The recipe page where you edit your recipes. A new feature is to check for firmware update. Then disconnect. When you're finished with your light, always remember to disconnect from the light. And finally, log out. At the bottom is a contact form. If you ever have any questions or comments or issues, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Let's check out the configuration page. At the top we have Identify. This flashes the light so you can identify which light in the group that you are connected to. Enable Security. This is a new feature. This allows you to lock out your lights to only be accessed by your Gmail account. Automatically check for firmware update. I recommend checking this box. That way every time you connect to your light, it checks to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of firmware. This is how you change your group. So you enter your new group number, and you can either change just that specific light you're connected to, or change network. This will change everything in that same group to the new group. Time sync. Enabling auto sync will ensure when you connect to your light, it updates the current time with your device's time. You can also force it to sync by tapping Sync Now. We have Reboot. device, which is a soft reset, and we have factory reset, which is a hard reset that will return your light to its original settings from the factory. Now let's check out the recipe page. The recipe page is where you will manage all of your recipes. Each recipe in the list has a toggle switch to quickly switch between recipes you've already made, an export button to save a copy of your recipe, an import to bring a recipe file into the app, more options on the side to rename, edit, delete, activate, and copy. Let's create a quick on-off recipe for veg for the Raging Kush. Tap Add Recipe, name your recipe, tap your new recipe to create steps. Because of the product-specific controls, you must choose what model you're creating the recipe for. Let's add our first step. Start by entering your time. I want this to go on at 7 a.m. Tap OK. The first step, always make sure is initial step box is checked. Set your spectrum. Transition instant. Tap apply. You've now created your first step. Now let's create the second step to turn the light off. Uncheck is initial step. We're setting this up for an 18.6. So 1 a.m. it will go off. Transition instant. Master intensity at 0. Tap apply. You now have an 18.6 simple on-off recipe. Now you can tap the center of the circle to activate. This will send the recipe to the light. Let's load it now. The recipe is now loaded. In order to run the recipe, simply turn the recipe toggle switch on. And as you see now, it is running the recipe. Now let's say we wanted to create this recipe as a sunrise sunset. Let's do that now. We're going to add a recipe. Set the model. Now we're going to add our first step. Now it's important to remember when setting up a ramping recipe, it always requires 2 steps for each ramp. The first step establishes your starting point. Transition is always instant. The second step establishes your end point, where you're ramping to. That transition will be ramp. So let's set our first step, 7 a.m. Initial step. Intensity at 0. This is the starting point, so it's coming from being off. So we're telling it, this is where you're starting. Transition instant. Apply. Now we'll set our endpoint, our sunrise. We'll make this a half hour long. So it's 7:30. It will ramp to our veg spectrum. Uncheck is initial step. Transition is now ramp. Tap apply. Now we need to set our sunset. So we will replicate the same spectrum settings to establish our starting point. This will be at 12:30. Transition instant. Tap apply. Now our final step, the end of our sunset. (1 a.m.) Master intensity at 0. Transition ramp. Tap apply. And you've now created a sunrise sunset veg recipe. Now just activate from the center of the circle. Go back. Now turn your recipe on. And now your recipe is running. Alright guys, well thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this tutorial, and thank you as always for growing with us.